Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Episode. Here we got something a little bit different for you this Friday because I am going to be talking about the Thrill Drive Trilogy. Technically there's 4 games, but one is impossible to find, and it doesn't really seem to be the same as the first 3, so we're calling this Blood on the Asphalt, where we're going to go over all 3 Thrill Drive games, talk about the history of their development, the games they inspired, and just how incredibly fun they actually are, because this has become my favorite arcade racing franchise of all time, not developed by Sega. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link down below as well. But without further ado, let's jump into the Thrill Drive Trilogy, because when I say these are amazing games and 2 of 3 you can play today, I mean it. So let's get started. And we're jumping right into the original Thrill Drive, the game that started the entire franchise, and it was released in 1998, and it runs on a combination of a PowerPC CPU with dual 3DFX graphics cards. And this is absolutely where the series gets its entire tone from, because this game is a fast-paced romp through traffic, but if you do not drive correctly, a lot of terrible things are going to happen. And when this game was in development, you could actually run over pedestrians and kill them, but developers at Konami pulled it out of the game thinking it would be too violent, because when you do crash your car, if you crash it badly enough, you can end up in a fatality situation, and that is how the game works. You can just straight up die. Now, speaking of dead, I do own an original arcade PCB for this game, but it has a bad EEPROM chip. I am working on getting that fixed, so I am currently playing this via emulation in MAME, a very old version that I will leave the link for below, but just be aware you can play the original Thrill Drive and 100% enjoy it. You don't need to have an original arcade PCB like me and try to repair it. But my favorite part about this game, and they nailed it right out of the start with the original, is just the sensation of speed. You are rocking this Volvo wagon as hard as that engine can possibly go, and trust me, a Volvo wagon from this era in real life is not going this fast. And if you think this game looks familiar, a highway race game where you can crash your car, it is because Burnout was 100% inspired by the Thrill Drive franchise. Developers of the Burnout game stated as such, and if you believe internet rumors, they even had a Thrill Drive cabinet in the offices while they were developing Burnout. So this game is super influential. If you didn't notice there, I just got the passenger ejected through the windshield. This is how hard the game goes. Now, there are settings in the menu where you can tone down that sort of violence, but honestly, that ragdoll polygon model doesn't look really realistic, so it's more funny than anything else at this point in time. But when you're playing this game and you're playing it well and you're weaving in and out of traffic and everything is going right, the sensation of speed and handling of the vehicle is about as good as any arcade racing game ever had. I even love these roundabouts here. Every single area in the game changes, and Konami used a lot of the same design language in subsequent games. Here with Thrill Drive 2, we get that same roundabout. But this game just fires on all cylinders. I love driving down the highway, shooting in between traffic, and trying to maintain that racing line, because when you're on top of your game and you're doing it well, you will absolutely destroy your opponents. But make one tiny little slip up and you're 100% going to crash that car. It is very easy to do. And if you want an even better sensation of speed, you go into that first person mode and you get to see the interior of the car, but now all of that weaving in and out of traffic just has so much more impact. When it's running at full speed, there is no better sensation than playing Thrill Drive, in my opinion, until you 100% just drive into the back of a box truck and eject yourself from the windshield. And you will see that this game has 3 different courses, and they all have different vibes to them, but they're all long races. Getting to the end of one is going to be around the 4 or so minute mark. So when you sit down to play a round of Thrill Drive, you're getting a lot of racing for those credits, or of course in my instance, I'm not putting credits in the game whatsoever. But it is just such an incredible game to play, and it also looks really good for 1998, the year of its release. We would have Dreamcast very shortly afterwards, but this is keeping up with something that Dreamcast feels like it could have done. But let's put Thrill Drive side by side with Burnout. you can 100% see the inspiration. Burnout wears it on its sleeve. These are basically the same game, and don't get me wrong, I love Burnout. I have every single game in the series, but I would say Konami did it better. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. Although the overlap of people that have played Thrill Drive and Burnout is probably going to be relatively thin, because this game doesn't get anywhere near the credit it deserves, and I feel like a lot of people have never played it before, and I hope to remedy that with this video. Because like I said at the top, you can play this in MAME. Sure, you're going to lose the rear view mirror, but that's not that big of a deal, and that's because it ran off a secondary sub-PCB with another graphics card on it. But the gameplay, the sensation of speed, the graphics, everything else works absolutely perfectly, and even if I never get this arcade board fixed, and trust me, it's giving me a lot of hell, you can still enjoy this game just like I did. But go ahead and listen to the soundtrack only for like 30 seconds because we're going to jump into Thrill Drive 2 soon. But the music is downright ominous, so listen and enjoy, and I'll be right back. Man, if I had to listen to that music every time I drove around, I would think the Grim Reaper was coming for me. But Thrill Drive's going to let you do more than just race a car. You're going to be able to race a city bus as well down a highway and hope not to crash in the back of an 18-wheeler, which is exactly what I'm going to do right now. It is even harder with the bus, but it makes the game so much more fun and comical. Now, unfortunately, if you believe the internet, and I did ask a few friends that live in Japan, this game is basically extinct in Japanese arcades, and I do not know of a single cabinet in an arcade in North America. There's a few private collectors, myself included, with PCBs, but otherwise, this game, if it wasn't for MAME, would basically be unplayable, and that's why emulation and preservation is so important, because it allows you to play games like this. And even though I still have some more work to do on my arcade PCB before it'll pass that last security check and I can have real hardware at home, the fact that you can play this in MAME today is incredible, because this is where the Thrill Drive franchise got its start. I absolutely love it, and it's even going to get better in Thrill Drive 2, because of course this game has multiple sequels. We're going to be talking about all of the ones we can find, so it's about time that we move over to the next game. See you there. Alright, and jumping right into Thrill Drive 2, I will say that this is a bigger, better, faster version of the original game outside of one key difference, and that's why I called the chapter title A Little Less Blood. Konami removed the violence in this game. You can no longer eject your player character out of the vehicle in a crash, and there are no more fatalities. And I played around with every setting on the PCB, and it just does not seem to be there. And while it does not affect the gameplay whatsoever, I'm a little bit disappointed Konami got shy and wouldn't give us those ragdoll physics. But what they did give us instead is a bigger, better version of the original Thrill Drive. You still get the same Europe, Japan, and American themed courses, but the course design in Thrill Drive 2, in my opinion, is the best the series has ever done. You're going to be on the highway, you're going to be driving through switchbacks and roundabouts, you're going to be drifting around castles. It gives you so much to see and so much to do, and it is just fast and intense. And the traffic patterns in this game have gotten even more difficult, because sometimes the cars will just jerk the wheel into your direction. It's like actually driving, where you cannot trust anybody around you to keep a straight line, because in this game sometimes the cars will just do insane things around you and there's nothing you can do. You can't avoid that accident, and I hope no one watching this channel has ever been in a bad accident, but if you have, you know sometimes you just can't trust the people around you, and that's what this game gives you all day long. That sensation of, even though you're doing well now, things could change at a moment's notice. But there's so many great courses in this game, and I love Japan at night. And you will see that we have some heavy rain going on, and that's because in the course selection screen, if you hold the shifter up or down, you can get different weather effects on different courses. This heavy rain for Japan, you can get denser fog in Europe, and you can get a more vibrant sunset that's actually distracting in the America course, and I will show you guys that in a little bit. But the driving in this game is just spectacular. driving down the highway at 200 kilometers an hour, weaving in and out of these trucks. When you're playing this game well, the sensation of speed and accomplishment is second to none in any other arcade racing game I have played, and it just is a better, bigger version of the original game. The courses are longer, but the big thing I keep coming back to is how much more complex they are. There's way more turns, there's way more things to see, and something like North America here, driving a big rig down the road, if you mess around with the sun, it's just messing with you even more. Now, trying to play this game becomes more difficult, but it is a really fun challenge for yourself. Once you've learned a course, you can 100% play around and go to that very vibrant sunset, which is just going to give you a harder time, but it means that you have to learn the course that much better. And that's where so much of the fun for Thrill Drive 2 for me is. The course always stays the same, but every time you start, the traffic pattern is going to be different, and depending on where you are in the race timing-wise, the traffic's going to change as well. But if we move over quickly to Thrill Drive 3, and we'll be getting to it in about 3 minutes, so hold on for that, you can tell just how much Thrill Drive 2 inspired that game. We're in America, the course is different, but that golden hour sunset is still the same, and I do love the look of that. But let's move back over to Thrill Drive 2, because that's what we're talking about. It's just a pretty game running on that PowerPC processor and the 3D effects chip on the Konami Viper board. It is a really powerful board for its time and place, and it does have some very Dreamcast vibes to me, but leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think it looks like. But one of the best parts about Thrill Drive 2 is if you go into the first person mode in the Europe course and you're on these back roads near this farmland, the sensation of speed, jumping around and drifting around these corners is amazing. This is my favorite part of the entire game right here, and when you're playing and you're playing well and you're first place and you're drifting those corners, this is just amazing. And I do have a wheel set up for this, and trust me, you want one if you want to play the game, but you do need original hardware because this just does not emulate. But if we put the original Thrill Drive side by side with Thrill Drive 2, you can see a lot of similarities in them as well. We're on the America stage here both times, but what I love about Thrill Drive 2 is it amps up the excitement of the original game. We're taking some gigantic jumps in that Volvo wagon, and the jumps in the original game are not anywhere near as large, and that's one of the main reasons why I prefer Thrill Drive 2 over the original, is that it's got the same physics handling, it's got the same intensity and great course design, except it is just a wilder game where you're jumping bigger, you're crashing harder, everything like that is just happening in real time. It is so much fun. But of course, just like the first game, I'm going to give you a little chance to hear the soundtrack for the second, but this area right here in Japan with that moon in the background, it just looks so great, and the real-time lighting effects of the headlights are spectacular. But I promise you some soundtrack, and I'm not a liar, so go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back.
Please be careful at the train crossing. You lack manners. A police car is approaching. Your courage is improving. Turn left, please. Turn right, please.
And that was a rough crash, and it's definitely not one you would be walking away from in real life. But of the 3 Thrill Drive games I am able to play, number 2 is hands down my favorite. It has all the fun and intensity of the original game, except it has more of it. The jumps are bigger, the speed is faster, the courses are better designed. It's just an all-around better experience. And I hate that I have to say that because it's the one game you can't emulate and play today. But of course we have another game to talk about, Thrill Drive 3 on the PlayStation 2 arcade hardware. So I will meet you over there in about 10 seconds and we'll talk about that game. See you there. And here we go right into Thrill Drive 3, and this is running on a PlayStation 2 emulator, PCSX2, more specifically a Python 2 fork of that emulator. Now I recently have been shopping and I did get in a Python 2 board, and I can actually load a hard drive onto it and get this game running, but it is a very complex process that I'm currently in the works on. Maybe I'll do a video on it, maybe I won't. I'm not sure how many people would really be interested in that, so leave me a comment down below. But this is the same fast racing intensity of every other Thrill Drive game before. Unfortunately, the violence has been so far nerfed in this game, it doesn't feel like the exact same franchise. Hitting regular cars on the road isn't going to do anything. driving head-on first into a train going 200 kilometers per hour definitely is going to throw your car. This game is as fun as the other two, but it doesn't have all of the same personality of a thrill drive game. You're going to be seeing some similar things like Japan here, completely different courses, but both take place at night, and maybe it's just because it's on the PlayStation 2 hardware. It's never been my favorite graphical look before, but I would still say something like Thrill Drive 2 on the Viper looks a little bit better to me. But the great thing is, even if we're lacking a little bit of that violence, the game is still spectacular to play in motion. The courses are well designed, all of the turns going from a highway to backcountry roads and back into city streets again. All of that is still here, and it is still an epic amount of fun. But it is interesting, the Thrill Drive franchise sort of has this weird cadence to it. 1 is amazing, 2 is even better than 1, 3 has that trilogy slump, that third movie, that third game in a series, always seems to lose itself just a little bit. But in this game, the police are going to hound you basically the entire way. If you get caught by a police officer, they're going to chase you, they're going to try to knock your car around, and they're going to try to get you to stop before you can progress again. And that actually is a lot of fun in the game itself. But of course, like the other two games, going into first-person mode is just incredible. But you will see as we drive directly into the back of vehicles in this game, we are not crashing nearly as much. It seems like the game just gives you certain areas in which that crash can occur, and in the rest of the gameplay, it's not putting it in there. Because in the first two Thrill Drives, going sideways into that 18-wheeler would have caused a fatality or a wreck. In Thrill Drive 3, it just doesn't have the same effect to it, and I do miss that. But honestly, because the racing is so incredibly good, we can live with it, because going under this bridge here, weaving in and out of traffic, it feels as good as the other two games, especially in the first person mode. It's just slightly a downfall that it doesn't allow you to crash as often as I kind of would like, because the entire goal of the game is not to crash. When you run head on into another vehicle going 215 kilometers per hour, you expect to do more than just glance off them and continue on along your drive. But every once in a while, the game is just going to throw something at you that you can't avoid, like that bus there. That caused us to crash. And the art here of that car flipping reminds me so much of Burnout 3, especially Crash Mode. Now, I told you in the Thrill Drive portion of this video that the developers at Criterion were inspired by Thrill Drive and apparently even had an original arcade cabinet in the offices. And it's so much fun to see these two games side by side and see how much they share, even though they were completely made by different people. But again, the racing in this game is just so good, you can't help but love it, even if you're not going to fly out of the front of your car all that often. Drifting around these corners in these city streets, it just gives you everything you would want in a game. Taking a turn, drifting in mid-air, flying into a trolley car and destroying yourself, it is just great, and it's so similar to the original Thrill Drive 2 we just talked about. Same San Francisco streets, same jumps, but a different course layout. 3 seems like a greatest hits version of 1 and 2 put together on a more modern platform, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because as we drift into Chinatown here, towards the end of the race, we're weaving in and out of traffic and drifting around those corners. That sensation of speed and maneuvering is great until you hit a car and basically stop dead. That's my one complaint about this game, is that it stops your momentum sometimes. But you'll see here in first person view, with all of this fog in the back countryside in Europe, it feels so similar in a good way, not a bad way, to the other Thrill Drive games. But just drifting around here outside of running straight into a train, and that car just got launched into the air. If we jump over to Thrill Drive 2, you're going to see the exact same thing, but it's a different course. But this game's soundtrack way more bright and cheery than the first two Thrill Drives, so go ahead and listen for 30 seconds and I will be right back. And I just 100% wrapped that truck right around that telephone pole, but just like the first two games, Thrill Drive 3 is going to give you large vehicles as well, and you can 100% drift a gas tanker through Chinatown. Probably a terrible idea in real life, but in the world of Thrill Drive, 100% a fun thing to do. And that's what Thrill Drive 3 is. It's a brighter, cheerier, less violent, more colorful version of the first two games, but all of the fun is intact. All of the racing is here. Everything about it is as good as you would expect. And because you can play this on the Python 2 fork of PCSX, it is 2 of 3 games in this video you can play right now. You can play the original Thrill Drive, and you can play Thrill Drive 3. Unfortunately, Viper emulation in MAME is nowhere near complete, and you can't play that game whatsoever, but 2 out of 3 ain't bad, is what I'm saying. And you definitely need to play these games. They are spectacular, but there is a 4th game in the series, and we do need to address that, so I'll meet you over in Thrill Drive 4 in about 10 seconds. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, Crazy Streets Thrill Drive 4. I can't show it to you because I don't own it, because I don't have any footage of it, because it's impossible to find. It does exist. Here's a flyer of the game, and it looks absolutely incredible, and you can get different photographs of arcade cabinets in the wild. But here's the thing, I don't even know what the PCB looks like. Yes, it's a PC in a box, but I don't know what it looks like, therefore I can't blind purchase things on Yahoo Auctions Japan hoping I can find one. So if you have a photograph of the PCB case inside of the cabinet, please leave me a comment down below so I know what it looks like so I can look for it, because I both want to review it, add it to my collection, and probably dump the hard drive. That's just because it's how much I love this series. But the great thing is you can play 2 out of 4 games right now via emulation, and a 3rd game on the Viper isn't the hardest thing to find. You might not find a Thrill Drive, but you can flash a card and burn a chip and be playing it. But that is the Thrill Drive trilogy that I can show you. They are 3 absolutely amazing games. They're some of my favorite Konami arcade games of all time, and they get really close to rivaling the best of what Sega's ever done. But short of that, leave me a comment down below and tell me, have you ever played Thrill Drive? Do you plan on playing it after this video? And do you have a photograph of Thrill Drive 4? If you do, I will love you forever. Short of that, I'll have videos throughout the week, but I'll be back next Friday with something completely different. See you guys next time. Drive safe out there. Bye-bye.